Hey everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood gamer, Rain. And as someone who absolutely loves Game Pass, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Microsoft, what in the hell are you doing? Game Pass used to feel like it was the best deal in gaming. It was the Netflix of games. One low price, a huge rotating library, and constant surprises that actually made you feel like you were getting your money's worth. But now, it's starting to feel more like the Hulu of gaming. Overpriced, confusing tiers, and weird marketing decisions that nobody asked for. Let's start with the obvious, the price. They're increasing the cost again, and the value isn't even keeping up. Remember when you could justify Game Pass because you'd think, oh cool, that one game alone covers the cost of the month. Now it's like, well, I'm technically paying extra so I can access cloud gaming and a handful of games I'll probably uninstall in a week or never touch. The ultimate tier has jumped from $19.99 to $29.99 a month. To justify it, they're saying we've added more one-day releases, better cloud streaming, perks like Fortnite Crew, Ubisoft Plus Classics, etc. They also rebranded the lower tiers, Core becoming Essential, Standard becoming Premium. My gripe is this. If I'm paying for Game Pass, I want access to the full library. I shouldn't have to pay extra for perks I don't use, like cloud gaming, which is a cool idea, but unless your internet is a solid, say, greater than 150 megabytes per second, or a minimum of 5G if you're using a cell phone, it's spotty, laggy, or just unstable. Why make me pay more for something and probably many others barely even use? Okay, so what is this new direction with Game Pass and Fortnite? Here's where it starts to feel a little insulting. It feels like Xbox is laser focused on catering to Fortnite players. Like, that's the core demographic now. Starting November 18th of 2025, Fortnite Crew will be included in Game Pass Ultimate. What exactly does this mean? It means that if you have Ultimate, you'll get the Fortnite Battle Pass included, 1,000 V-Bucks every month, some extra cosmetic packs or exclusive Crew Pack tied to Fortnite Crew. The standalone Fortnite Crew subscription is $11.99 a month. So Microsoft is basically bundling an $11.99 value pack into an already hugely pricier Ultimate. That's not a bonus, that's part of the push to justify the climb. And here's where it bites worse. People who don't play Fortnite or don't care are still paying for it. Their quote-unquote free game buffet now includes an extra charge for something that they won't use. Meanwhile, Fortnite players, some of whom are already paying for crew or battle passes, are getting a discount of sorts because what they were buying is now bundled. But what about the people who don't play Fortnite? It almost seems like favoritism. It also shifts the narrative. Game Pass used to be about exploring the full spectrum of games. Now it's signaling, hey, if you play Fortnite, we've got extra goodies for you. And it feels like Microsoft is catering towards that crowd specifically, and leaving people like me and many others with the scraps. And listen, I'm not bashing on Fortnite players. If you love it, great, have fun. But it's weird watching Game Pass pivot so hard towards one game when it used to be about variety. Game Pass used to celebrate the entire gaming ecosystem. Indie games, narrative adventures, weird experimental titles. Now it's like, hey look, we partnered with Epic. You can play Fortnite with some extra perks. Cool, I guess, but what about literally every other gamer? And then there's the Ubisoft partnership. Now don't get me wrong, on paper, that's great. Ubisoft has some solid franchises, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Watch Dogs, among many others. But here's the problem. If you're like me and you have been a solid Ubisoft fan and or simply too broke for the Ubisoft Plus subscription, you already own half that library. It's like being offered a free dessert at a restaurant, but realizing it's just a second scoop of the same ice cream you've already ordered and you were hoping for a tiramisu. If Ubisoft Classics gives you 10 more games, but you already have 6 of them, it doesn't feel like much of an upgrade. For folks who don't own much of the Ubisoft catalog or are new Ubisoft players, sure, it's a real perk. But bundling it doesn't solve the problem of the base cost. It doesn't help those of us who already have diverse libraries and just want the core Game Pass experience, not extra overlap. The thing is, Game Pass used to feel like it was made by gamers for gamers. It felt like a celebration of variety. Like, hey, here's this weird indie game or AAA title that you've never heard of, but trust us, you'll love it. Now it's starting to feel like it's made by executives for shareholders. And that's disappointing because I don't want to cancel Game Pass. I've been a loyal subscriber for years. I've discovered some of my favorite games through it. But when you start hiking up that price and shifting the cost away from what made it great in the first place, it's hard not to feel like we're watching the beginning of the end of what Game Pass used to stand for. Let me be clear. I don't have a problem with Fortnite players. If you love it, cool. Play the hell out of it. I just don't want to be forced to subsidize perks for it that I can't or won't use. Game Pass is becoming more tiered, more segmented, and more tied to special perks. Once again, this looks great on paper, but the worst part is you're paying for everything, and then being told, well, you'll use some of it, maybe. If the price had stayed reasonable and the library stayed intact, adding perks like Ubisoft and Fortnite might have been a bonus. But not when it's used as a justification for a 50% price increase. And for people like me who don't use cloud gaming much, why should I subsidize a feature that I hardly touch, or it barely even works for me when I do? At the end of the day, I still want Game Pass to be the amazing platform that it is. I just want to feel like myself and other gamers like me are getting a fair deal. But right now, it's starting to feel like it's just being reshaped for certain kinds of users like Fortnite fans and heavy cloud gamers, while the rest of us are paying for features that we don't want or need. And here's the thing, if Microsoft really wants to start adding perks like battle passes and in-game currencies, why stop at Fortnite? Why not throw in COD points for Call of Duty, or credits for Forza Horizon 5? Maybe even gold for Sea of Thieves, atoms for Fallout 76, or crowns for Elder Scrolls Online, and it not be tied into just the monthly perks that you get. If Microsoft wants to make this right, they'd keep the Game Pass library whole at the base price of $9.99 and optionalize perks like Fortnite, Ubisoft, cloud gaming, and so on so that it could be bundled into the base price for, say, like an extra $5 or $10 a feature if you want it, without having to be forcefully dragged into it. Or at the bare minimum, give us the entire library access without forcing the extras or locking parts of it behind tiers and premium labels. The previous way it worked with things like Ubisoft Plus and GTA Plus wasn't broken and didn't need to be fixed. Because the truth is, the previous model with things like Ubisoft Plus or GTA Plus, offered separately, wasn't broken. It worked. People who wanted those extras could buy them. The rest of us could just enjoy the core library for a fair price. It just didn't line the pockets of Microsoft as much as they would have liked, and at the core of it all, that's why it changed. So why did Microsoft actually do this? What's the reasoning behind hiking Game Pass prices and bundling in things like Fortnite Crew and Ubisoft Plus Classics? Well, let's break it down. First, even though Game Pass has already made nearly $5 billion last fiscal year, Microsoft is looking to push those numbers higher, closer to the $7.5 billion, without even needing to add a ton of new subscribers. That's the math on the 50% price hike. It's about maximizing revenue from the fans who are already paying. Second, remember that including major titles like Call of Duty on Game Pass comes with a cost. Microsoft reportedly lost over $300 million in potential sales on Call of Duty Black Ops 6 alone. So part of the reasoning for adding perks and raising prices is to make up for some of that lost revenue. Third, bundling in perks like Fortnite Crew and Ubisoft Plus Classics isn't just about being generous. It's about making the higher tier subscriptions feel, quote-unquote, worth it. It's a marketing move that makes you think, oh, I'm paying more, but look at all the extra goodies I get. And fourth, Microsoft is following the broader industry trend. Subscription services are the future of gaming. Sony, EA, and others are doing it too. Adjusting Game Pass is their way of staying competitive and keeping the services in line with the rest of the market. But here's the kicker though. While these moves make sense from a corporate perspective, they don't always make sense for gamers like us. If you are not using Fortnite Crew or cloud gaming or don't care about Ubisoft Classics because you already own the games, you're paying for something that you may never touch. And that's what makes it frustrating. Game Pass wasn't broken before. It gave us hundreds of titles for a fair price. Now it feels like the service is being reshaped to maximize Microsoft's profit revenue rather than keeping it simple, affordable, and fan-focused. So yeah, as someone who genuinely loves Game Pass and wants it to succeed, I'm just frustrated. Game Pass doesn't need to reinvent itself. It just needs to remember why people fell in love with it in the first place. Keep it simple, keep it affordable, keep it for the gamers, not just the Fortnite crossovers and corporate partnerships. That said, I do like the addition of games like Skull and Bones. It's the kind of fresh, exciting title that reminds me of why Game Pass can be so amazing. But honestly, with all these changes and price hikes, I think Microsoft is at risk of losing a lot of subscribers. Anyway, those are my thoughts. What do you guys think? Are you sticking with Game Pass, or is this the breaking point for you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you loved this video, don't forget to hit that like, smash that bell, and share it with your friends. Until next time, stay educated, gamers.